It is Wednesday, March 8th. Welcome, everybody, to the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. As always, let me get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. And then we'll take a couple minutes and wait for folks to arrive because anybody who's watching this recorded, we're live. So kind of have to wait for TikTok to notify people and YouTube and everybody else. So while we're waiting for that, usually it's about 2 or 3 minutes. So if it is recorded and you're watching on YouTube later, feel free to jump ahead 2 or 3 minutes and see if we've begun. Otherwise, hi, how's everybody doing? Say where you are hailing from, if you would. Always like to. I think the geographic thing is always kind of fun. Oh, I made tea, which I don't normally do, but the Irish are infecting me. Mm. Ah, my nephew bought me some good tea for Christmas, and I have to say it's opened my eyes. I didn't know tea could be that good. I am definitely a coffee guy. I like coffee, but this stuff I'm shocked. I just never knew it could be that good. Anyway, hello everybody. Lots of news as always today. I'd say it's a very interesting news day. A lot of interesting stuff. So I even had to cut some news because we had so much. So anyway, we'll get rolling in a minute, and you will see whether it's interesting or not. We're going to talk about obviously Ukraine, and then I'm going to devote towards the end of the show, give it a little update on what is going on in Georgia, the former Soviet republic that's been independent now for 30 years, having a lot of violent protests there against the government that is becoming kind of evil. So the government's becoming kind of evil, I should say. So yeah, so lovely. Anyway, but yeah, let's wait another minute or so for folks to arrive on TikTok and YouTube, and then we will get rolling. Thank you. Who was that? Marcy? No, it wasn't Marcy. Who was that? Confetti. Ellen. Okay. Hey, Ellen. Thank you for that. Anyway, but yeah, finish weighing in, saying where you are all hailing from, and then we will start in a second. I'm telling you, that tea, I'm very surprised. It's a good tea. All right, I'll get rolling, guys. So welcome. I am John Aravosis, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Я говорю немного по-русски. Coming from Washington, D.C., I am on my iPad. I was going to say, mods, don't block me for speaking Russian. Somebody asked if I speak Russian. I speak a little bit of Russian. But TikTok on my iPad. I've got YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, everybody else on my laptop. That's why you will see me going back and forth. Thank you for the cat's paw there, Nurse Boyer. The way the show works is about the first half hour or so, sometimes longer. I go through the news of the day. Basically, I pick the stories that I think are important and then tell you why I think they're important, and trying to give you an overall view of where the war stands today. And then the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. So on TikTok, that means going to my profile, clicking the Q&A link, and you can leave questions there or comments too. Feel free just to give me your impression of what's going on with the war or a specific issue we brought up. On YouTube, the rest of you, just use the comment box at the bottom. Also, I am very happy to get gifts from you all on TikTok and on YouTube with the super chat and the super stickers, because I do this for a living. I'm kind of hard to explain what I do, but I've been working in politics for over 30 years now, focusing on politics with the internet. Back in 1995, I really started specializing in using the internet for politics. So I was one of the early folks in Washington doing that in DC. And that's what I do. So when the war broke out, I decided I wanted to apply my skills to basically getting the story out there about Ukraine and helping people understand what's going on from a political perspective, which is my background, working in politics in Washington all these years. I'm a lawyer. I've worked as a journalist as well. In any case, but the people who are paying me are you guys. Nobody is actually paying me to do this, and I'm doing it full time. So I appreciate your support, and frankly, your gifts help a lot. So thank you for that. All right, let's dive right in. So today, we'll start with Bakhmut, since every day we start with Bakhmut. Bakhmut is a Ukrainian city in the east. Thank you for the mustache and hat, Peach. It is a Ukrainian city in the east. Here we go. Bakhmut's more or less around here where my finger is. So a little bit east and south of Kramatorsk, a little bit southwest of Severodonetsk. It is right on the border between Russian-held territory and free Ukraine, right? The Russians hold this land more or less here. So Bakhmut is right on the border. And there has been significant fighting going on there for like 9 months or something. I mean, the Russians have been ridiculously insane trying to take over this town. The town simply doesn't matter. But the Russians, for whatever crazy reason, probably for ego at this point, feel like they've sunk so much into it. Thank you, Annie, for the gamer cat. That they've wasted so many men, and they've lost a lot of men, and wasted so much ammunition and so much equipment in Bakhmut that now they don't have a choice but to win it. What I've been telling you over the last several days, though, is that it doesn't matter to the Russians strategically, and we're going to talk about that in a second, about what the Russian options are going forward. They're not great of what they do after taking Bakhmut, which they may. Thank you, user, for the hand hearts there. The other issue is that Russia overall, and we've talked about this a lot the last few days. I'll give a quick summary because we've talked a lot the last couple of days. Russia's not in a good position overall right now. They basically, as you guys know, thank you, Louis. As you guys know, they they drafted 200,000 to 300,000 men back in September, right? And they basically have already used those men. I mean, thank you, El, for that. They've used them. And what do they have to show for it? Not much. Basically, if you look at a map, I mean, my map right here, thank you, Doobie Man, for the chef's kiss. If you look at my map, you won't see the lines of the borders between the troops because I don't have that here. But I can tell you from looking at it just the other day, right? This is the Russians. The line between them is more or less like this, right? So Russians south and east, Ukrainians west. The Russians, you will see little bits of red in different places here. But I'm talking as if I have a tiny little marker and I'm just touching this map. That is what the Russians have to show for themselves over all these months with the 300,000 troops they got. And keep in mind, in early February, a lot of us got worried because all the defense experts, and they were correct, said the Russians now have the initiative. Now it's the Russians' ball game, at least for several months. And we were worried with this new Russian offensive. Oh my God, what are they going to do? Well, the Russians decided to go after Bakhmut, Volodar, a town a little bit southwest of Bakhmut, and Kremina, a town a little bit north of Bakhmut. And thank you for the gifts. There was that whoever's giving me the garland, Louis, for the garland. And they blew it. In Kremina in the north, the Russians started advancing a little bit, but not much. And now they're kind of stuck. In Volodar in the south, I say south, these are only 125 miles or 200 kilometers away from each other. So all three of these cities are very close. Thank you for the paw there, Marcy. The Russians in Volodar in the south got obliterated, destroyed. Their troops were so freaked out by the Ukrainians, they got up and ran from their weapons, and the Ukrainians ended up basically inheriting 30 vehicles, the Russians, that were totally working, that the Russians were so scared they left behind. And now the problem for the Russians is they've shot their shot. And now they don't really have any extra troops. They don't have any extra equipment. They don't have any extra ammunition. This was it. It looks like, and again, I always want to caveat and say, who knows, right? It's war. Anything can happen. But the experts are saying that big Russian offensive this spring, when the Russians were going to do their big attack, and then they started doing this in the east, and we thought, this is a little attack the Russians are doing in preparation for the big attack. This appears to have been their big attack. They got nothing out of it, and they might get the strategically insignificant town of Bakhmut, and the Secretary General of NATO says possibly in the coming days. So possibly in the next few days, or in the next couple of weeks at least, thank you, Lala, for the little crown, the Russians might get Bakhmut. Oh, we have a very cool gift on TikTok. Hey, oh my. Hold on. Now that's a ridiculously nice, I'm sorry, I always have to interrupt for stuff like this. That is a ridiculously cool gift. I thank you, Big Drama. That I recognize that gift. Thank you. That was ridiculous. Thank you for that. Seriously, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. No, because the gifts really do help, guys. I mean, I literally, I'm paying my bills and someday hope to put money away for retirement because I'm not that young anymore, but that helps a lot. Thank you. So let me move on now and tell you what the Russians are going to do. Let's say the Russians get Bakhmut sometime in the next couple days or the next couple of weeks. Okay. What are they going to do next? Now, I will caveat first by saying President Zelensky just interviewed with Wolf Blitzer on CNN and once again gave his line he gave the other day about how Bakhmut is very important. If the Russians move in there, they can move further east and north and blah, blah. As another defense expert said the other day on, I think it was Sky News, Michael Clark said this. He said, actually, no, Michael Clark said this on Twitter, but he is a British defense expert. He said, Zelensky's a president. He has to say that. He can't say this town doesn't matter. Thank you, Nancy, for that. He can't say this town doesn't matter, right? He's got to, and did Vic, and I'm sorry, Vic, I meant to thank you as well. I don't know if I did when I was on my roll there. He has to say Bakhmut matters. We don't want to lose it because what's he going to do? Give up one of his towns, right? So that makes sense. But thank you, Larko. Thanks, Nancy. But in fact, Bakhmut does not matter strategically. Now, let me explain to you why. So, Institute for the Study of War did a nice analysis on what the Russians will do next if they get Bakhmut in the next few weeks, okay? At the same time, I was watching one of the experts, I forget if it was Michael Clark or who, but one of the experts, defense experts on Sky News as well, who were talking about it. So this synthesizes sort of all of it. Once again, let me show you on the map, okay? So the Russians control all of this, right? All of this. So the line between the Russians and the Ukrainians, Russians in the east and the south, Ukrainians west and north. So the line, I mean, more or less, the line is like this coming, well, I'm not getting it entirely. It comes through Donetsk and then cuts over like this. So Russians below and east, Ukrainians up above and west. You got Bakhmut. Once the Russians get Bakhmut, again, the Russians control this. If the Russians get Bakhmut and move a little bit over, they want to move further over. Well, the two cities they want to get are Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. I'm sure it's Sloviansk. Right here, my finger is where literally like the middle of my nail pointing here. I almost need I want like a finer pointer. Here we go. I'll use my finer pointer that doesn't have ink coming out. So Bakhmut is right at the tip of my pen, okay? Kramatorsk is right here. I don't have the distance, but it's nothing. I mean, it's if somebody even wants to Google for me from Bakhmut to Kramatorsk, I'm going to guess 40 miles. Take a look and see, but it's not far. And Sloviansk is just up of Kramatorsk. It's not that far up. So you'd think by getting Bakhmut, they're in a really good position to get Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, right? They're very close. In fact, no, they're not. Not at all. Here's the problem. There are two main highways that the Russians would need to use to get from Bakhmut to those other cities, okay? One highway comes directly west from Bakhmut and then comes up to Kramatorsk. The other one from Bakhmut kind of comes up, sort of up and to the right. So basically like northwest. One goes west and then north, the other goes northwest. The problem is, listen to this. I mean, it's kind of amazing actually how bad this is for the Russians. Again, the point in getting this town and wasting thousands of men's lives should have been for the Russians to put themselves in a better position to take more Ukrainian towns. That's not what's happening. Listen to this. So there's only two highways, okay? The roads are there. They're skinny highways. So the Russians would have to kind of go, tank by tank in a row. They wouldn't be able to do like a big force or anything. So they'd have to go slowly in a line up the highway. There's only two highways. The highways are fine, but off the highways are now muddy, right? We had warned about this. Come mid-March or March 8th, we're at right now, the spring starts in Ukraine, and with spring comes the rains and the mud. And guess what? You can't run a tank through the mud. So all the heavy Russian vehicles have got to take the highways. That's the first problem. Second problem, there's two highways. The Russians don't have enough manpower and equipment to take both highways and win. If they try both highways, thank you for that. Who's it? Panya for the Panther. If the Russians try to do both highways at once, they're splitting their forces in half and they're going to get slaughtered. Now, it's not, even with one highway, it doesn't look good. With two, they're nuts. So they're going to have to pick one highway. And again, well let me tell you more of this. So they're going to pick one highway they've got to pick. The Ukrainians are well prepared along that highway. And while the Russians are on the road, the Ukrainians are going to pick them off one by one as the Russians drive that, whichever highway they drive, west or northwest. The Russians can't go into the fields and try to spread out because the fields are muddy, as I just said, but they'll get stuck. So they're stuck on a highway getting picked off by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have had months and months and months to dig in, and they have dug in. The Ukrainians have amazing defenses in this area waiting for the Russians. Hang on a second here. Hello, firecrackers. Thank you, Bonnie, for the firecrackers. I just wanted, because I had a lot of points, I didn't want to miss any of them. Even in choosing just one road, which the Russians have to do, Russia lacks the mechanized forces it would need to break through Ukrainian defenses. Basically, Russia has been using this technique of, artillery, using artillery to like destroy Bakhmut, the city, and then sending its troops in running. Remember, they were using the Wagner Group mercenaries and the prisoners that these guys got, the Russian prisoners, and sending the prisoners in and just running man after man and letting them get mowed down. I mean, bodies on top of bodies, these guys just running, but hoping that they had so many men running, the Ukrainians couldn't kill them all. That might work attacking a city. It doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're going along a highway for tens of miles, right, up a hill. I mean, men in the open will just get slaughtered. So they don't have the mechanized, what were they calling it? The mechanized forces that they need, the vehicles and everything else to actually do the kind of warfare they need, not in a city. So in other words, the very way they captured Bakhmut will not work for trying to go at these other cities. Oh, and finally, this was another point that the Michael Clark, I guess the expert on Sky News, raised. He said, when you're going from Bakhmut, which is right here, and again, either west and north on the highway or the other highway like this, he said, it's all uphill. He goes, the Ukrainians are going to be looking down at you the entire way and shooting at you. He said, you're going to get destroyed. So it's very bad for the Russians. This is why, I mean, I was glad to sort of read this today and a couple different things, as I said, because we've been talking about it for weeks, but nobody, I think, has done a great explanation of why it is that Bakhmut doesn't matter strategically. And now we see why it doesn't matter. It absolutely does not set the Russians up for any kind of advantage when they leave Bakhmut to go. And actually, what I think Michael Clark, the guy in Sky News, said today was, he said, basically, the Russians are, they're here at Bakhmut. He said they're going to have to invade for Kramatorsk. They're going to have to come either from the south or from the north. He said coming from basically the southwest where Bakhmut is going to do them no good. So disaster. Great news. Thank you, Super Sticker, for Richard there. There was a war poll. Let me give you this quickly too, and then I'll do a little quick break, and then we're going to talk about the director of national intelligence giving an intelligence assessment of Russia today. A new poll in Russia. This I thought was interesting because Institute for the Study of War, which is the defense think tank I really like, they talked about the poll today. Thank you for the hot air balloons. Who was that? Big drama again. Thank you, big drama. You're outdoing yourself today. Thank you. And Benji, thank you as well for the corgi. There's a new poll out of Russia. An Institute for the Study of War, which is a defense think tank here in Washington, D.C., where I live, and it's a very good defense think tank. They talked about the poll, and they seem to think the poll is like bad news. I think the poll's pretty good news. Listen to this. Russian independent polling organization, the Levada Center, released poll results that 51% of Russians feel negatively towards Russians who left the country due to mobilization. 10% of Russians polled indicate that they have a positive or understanding attitude towards those that left. Listen to this. This is their conclusion. Now, I'm sorry, let me tell you really quick. What they're talking about is when Putin did the big draft that he had in September to get all these extra men that he was going to use to crush Ukraine, and now he's already used the extra men and nothing happened. Well, when he did the draft, between 500,000 and 1 million Russian men who were draft age, so who were like 18 to 27 or maybe even 35, fled the country. Remember, they went to all the surrounding countries, and literally 500,000 to 1 million Russian men fled the country. Thank you there, Pauline. What is interesting to me is 51% of Russians think that's a bad thing. Okay, 51%. Levada says the poll, I asked even worse. Institute for the Study of War says Levada's polling data demonstrates that the Kremlin retains a strong hold over the domestic information space, meaning the Kremlin retains a strong hold over domestic propaganda. I'm looking at this going, the Kremlin, I think they're crazy for saying this. They're a good think tank, but this was ridiculous. The Kremlin, Putin, has been telling people this is a war for Russia's survival. The latest thing they're saying is that, right, we are fighting all of NATO. It's us against them. They literally want to destroy Russia. If NATO wins this war, Russia will possibly cease to exist. He's presenting it as an existential war for the survival of the country. And 1 million Russian men go and run away to the country next door. Only 51% of Russians think that's a bad thing, right? Now, 11% say it's positive, but it means another 40% or so say, I don't know what to think. You've only got half the country that thinks it's bad that the Russian men, 1 million Russian men, fled the country to not fight for the motherland in an existential crisis. You get what I'm saying? Like, those numbers are really good. I look at that and go, you're at war. Those numbers should be 75, 85%. If you're at war and you're at an existential war, right? That the survival of your country is at stake, and half your country goes, right? So thank you for the hat and mustache there, Velvet. So you get what I'm saying. This is, I think, a good sign that the support in Russia is kind of still for this war. Thank you, Phoenix, as well, and Velvet. I'll do a quick pitch about my Discord, and then we're going to talk about the Director of National Intelligence, our top intelligence official here in the States. Thank you, Happy Beach. And what she said today about what's coming next from Putin in Ukraine. And teaser, I will tell you, is it ain't good for Putin. And who is that? Dark Phoenix with the hand heart. Real quick, we have a Discord. One of the ways I support my work, but also support Ukraine, is I've got a Discord community, discord.aravosis.com. You can find it via the links in my profile. Anything I talk about on the show, like that of my Discord, my Patreon, etc. Just go to my my profile on TikTok, click the URL, the link tree, and you get all of my links. Same thing for you guys here. Go to aravosis.com, which is my Linktree link, and find everything. So the Discord's a neat community where we can chat and hang out about different topics. It's free, but there's also a paying element if people want to support my work. And for people who pay, there's a special VIP auction place, but there's also a public auction area for other folks. And I auction off cool stuff from Ukraine. And the idea is 50% of the profits from the auction I take because I use it to support my work, because quite literally, I'm doing this for free and I'm doing it full time. And I've been doing it for a year now because I think it's important to do what I can for Ukraine. So it's, again, your guys' support that's paying my bills and letting me do this. So thank you. But one of the ways to do that is to do the auctions. And the other 50%, the other half of the auction monies, I'm channeling back into Ukraine. We've been buying, internet. We've been buying drones. We've been buying supplies for civilians, food for civilians, helping people with disabilities. We even bought a bus and helped people get out. Actually, there's some fundraising we did with you guys. We bought a bus and helped people escape from Mariupol. Anyway, we've been doing a lot of fundraising, helping the Ukrainians. And but with my auction, what I've been doing is finding cool Ukrainian things and selling them to you guys, basically as an auction. Today, we just auctioned off one of my 2 remaining Azov-style bracelets that are the really cool bracelets the Ukrainian government made of the remaining steel from the Azov-style plant where the 2,000 Ukrainians fought the 14,000 Russians. Anyway, that just sold today. Congratulations. Blue-eyed, whatever your name is out there. And thank you for the boat. I like that boat a lot, by the way. That's always a pretty, thank you, Lorna. I like the blue and the wave and everything. We've also got the Zelensky sweatshirts. I found the actual sweatshirts that Zelensky wears, and we went to the company and bought a bunch of them in Ukraine. These are the ones, you'll recognize them. This is the one that he wore. He was wearing a lot, actually, the last few months. He wore it to the White House. He wore it to the joint session of the U.S. Congress. He wore it to talk to the British Parliament. So we've got a number of those we're auctioning. And then finally, I went through my collection of stuff from all the years. Thank you, Confetti, Tom Clark there. I went and I found an old piece of the Berlin Wall that I've got that I broke off the Berlin Wall back on the early morning of December 3rd, 1989, when I was working for Congress. I was working for a U.S. senator, and we were on an arms control trip. I was an arms control aide, among other things, and we went on an official congressional delegation. And that night, I met some friends, and we went out and just broke off pieces of the wall because it was 3 weeks after the wall came down, metaphorically, but not physically. The wall was still up. East German troops were still on the wall with their machine guns. They were telling you not to get close to the wall. The government, our government, I mean, the West was saying, don't get close to the wall. Don't try to chip at it and break it because you might freak out the East Germans, this kind of thing. Everybody was like, it's 2:00 in the morning and I am at the wall and there was a piece of rebar sticking out. I showed you guys the other day, and I'm bent for half an hour pretty much. I'm with this piece of bar trying to break it off the wall, and as I'm doing it, pieces are coming off. This is one of the pieces that came off. I've got pictures. Anyway, it's all in my Discord. I've got pictures showing you my picture literally breaking it off the wall. Proof that I was with Congress and on the delegation. Anyway, so that's one of the other things we're auctioning off. It's a lot of fun. The auctions have been a lot of fun, and I think we've raised at this point probably $10,000 for Ukraine from the auctions, which has also been kind of cool. And that means $10,000 to help pay my bills as well over the last year, which, living in Washington, D.C. helps a lot. We're actually the third most expensive city in the U.S. It sucks. Absolutely sucks. It's like all the price of New York and San Francisco without the pizzazz of New York and San Francisco. But what do you do? Okay, let me talk now this other story. This was very interesting. The Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, she is the top Biden administration intelligence official. Okay. So hang on a second, a little more tea here. She testifies before Congress today and is talking about how the Russians are doing and what the U.S. intelligence community thinks will be happening next. Okay. Let me read you a little bit of this. This was from the New York Times. Now, I will tell you in summary, overall, sorry, my allergies, of course, are going nuts today. It's springtime. Overall, she thinks that Putin doesn't have the ability for large offensives going forward, and rather he will try to drag out the war. Thank you, Dankeschön. He will try to drag out the war for as long as he can, not with any, basically dig in, hold in, do small battles, and just wait for NATO to get tired of helping Ukraine. Let me give you the specifics, though. This is again from the New York Times. This is from her. Russia lacks the ammunition and troops to make territorial gains in Ukraine this year, okay, and could shift to a hold and defend strategy, dragging out the war, top official Avril Haines said. Thank you, Robert, for the plot. Russia may sink, prolonging the war, even if it means long pauses and an offensive push, as its best chance of achieving its strategic goals. In addition to troop losses, Russia faces critical morale challenges and ammunition shortages. This is always interesting to bring up because we've been worrying a lot about Ukraine with the ammunition, and it's a big deal. I mean, we are worrying about the ammunition problems. But what is interesting is we don't talk about Russia's ammunition problems nearly as enough. They're having problems too. So she says, in addition to troop losses, Russia faces critical morale challenges and ammunition shortages. Russia will need to identify ammunition supplies from other countries and increase the size of its military if it wants to push forward in Ukraine. And Lilia, I will get to yours right after I finish reading this quote. If Russia, so this is the final quote from her, listen to this. If Russia does not initiate a mandatory mobilization, meaning a mandatory draft, and identify substantial third-party ammunition supplies, it will be increasingly challenging for them to sustain the current level of offensive operations in the coming months. And consequently, Russia, may fully shift to holding and defending territories they occupy. In short, we do not foresee the Russian military recovering enough this year to make major territorial gains. That's a big freaking deal. Now, I'm glad to see this because anybody who's been watching the last few days, I've been talking about this because others, I mean, not just me, others have been talking about the fact that it looks like the Russians are culminating in the East, but pretty much everywhere, which is a military term to mean when you go on the offensive, on the attack, and you finally just get spent. You've lost too many men. The other men are either too injured or too tired. you run out of ammunition, you're running out of vehicles because they got destroyed, and you just can't sustain the attack anymore. And you've then got to fall back and defend. That's what's happening to the Russians right now. And again, they think, one other estimate I saw, I think this was Institute for the Study of War, said at least until the summer, they don't think Russia, at the very least, it'll take Russia till the summer to be able to launch another major attack. And even then, it's questionable because they too think Russia's going to need a major draft in order to pull this off. So very interesting. Lilia, let me see here real quick. Lilia's got a question, a comment, I think, related to this. The problem with the men that are left is that they don't condemn the war. Oh, I see. She means that she's talking about the polling. Sorry, this is the polling in Russia. The earlier story I talked about was that a new poll in Russia shows that 51% of Russians, but really only 51% of Russians, are critical of the up to 1 million Russian men who fled the country, which is kind of wild. I think that's a very low number, right? You think, your country's at war and you've been told it's an existential crisis. Who was that? Newton, thank you for that. If it's an existential crisis, you should be pretty pissed at the 1 million men who left you behind, but they're not. Lily is saying, the problem with the men left behind is that they don't condemn the war and don't take collective responsibility for the state of Russia. True. They still love Russia and Putin and don't think they should be fighting, but professional soldiers, right? They don't think they should be fighting, but professional soldiers. What she's saying, I think, but professional soldiers should. Exactly. Thank you, by the way. Oh, inspired woman, of course. Thank you for the flowers. It's not clear. It's not clear whether I'm not convinced anybody's a real hero here on the Russian side. Okay, the men who fled, they didn't flee because we're living in a dictatorship and this is a horrible government and we're executing a war where we're literally trying to eliminate the country next to us. That's not why they left, right? I mean, the opposition people left because they were getting threatened with jail, right? The opposition media had to leave, the free media, the civil society groups. The head rabbi of Moscow had to flee Russia with his family because he was threatened, okay? They left for legitimate reasons. But these guys left because suddenly it became, 8 months in, it became their turn to go to war. And they suddenly went, whoa, if I've got to go fight, maybe I don't like this war. And that's why they left. The guys that remained behind didn't even have the balls to leave. So they're still stuck at home. So I would agree with you. I would say the guys who left are maybe one step above the guys who stayed. But the guys who stayed, forget it. Anyway, so the next story we're going to talk about is Georgia, the former Soviet Republic. Thank you for the hat there, B. Smith. Just because it's been such a story in the news, it's tangentially related to Russia, but it's such a huge story right now that I thought people have been asking to do a sort of a summary of what's going on. And I think it's important. And I think Russia may start mucking around too. And very interesting parallels to Ukraine here as well. I will tell you really quick as well. I've got a Patreon account as well, which I would hope you guys frequent. It's patreon.com/Aravosis. You guys on TikTok, etc., can see it at the bottom of the screen. You guys can find it in the Linktree link in my profile. Patreon is just simply a way that you can, thank you for the flower there, Carmel. Patreon is a way that you can support creators with a monthly gift. So basically $5, $10, $25 a month, and you just set it up automatically. And it's just a way of thanking them. With my Patreon, it also gives you some extra access in my Discord. My Discord's free anyway, but it gives you, if you're $5 a month or more, then you get to access our VIP auction, which is, we've got 2 auctions running. I make sure we always have stuff in the VIP section, which is a much smaller crowd, so you have a better chance of getting it in principle. And if you spend even more money, I have sort of a monthly chat that I do with folks, a private chat with a group of actually our last chat was only 6 people, hung out for half an hour, and we just talked for an hour on our own. So there's some nice benefits, but also it helps me because I get to see how much is coming in each month and I can anticipate paying my bills next month. So thank you for that. Thank you for the hand heart there, Messi. As always, the reason I mentioned this is because I am doing this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out, and no one's paying me to do it except you guys. You're the ones paying my bills. So thank you. That's why I ask for your help. So thank you guys. All right, Georgia. let's talk about, oops, I forgot. Whenever I bang on the table, I always scare my dog. Sorry about that, dog. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. Let me have another sip of tea, and then we're going to talk about Georgia. So Georgia is a former Soviet republic. They hate when we say that. Thank you, Bonnie and Flower Lady. But it's important to say that because it's important for the history of what we're talking about. The Soviet Union was made up of, and I keep meaning to Google this, I think it's 15 republics who were basically other countries that the Russians ate. That's the best way to call it, and held hostage. Places like Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, right? Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. I mean, all of these independent countries, basically, that and independent peoples that the Russians just decided to kidnap, in essence. Well, when the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the Georgians, like the Ukrainians and others, were free. What is going on right now is the second day of very serious protests, violent protests at times. There were Molotov cocktails involved today, where basically you have gasoline in a bottle and throwing it so it explodes. That kind of stuff, from what I've read of the Georgian experts, people in Georgia that I'm following on Twitter, say they've never really had that kind of thing at protests before. They tried to storm the parliament today. Thank you, Alan. The police have responded violently. With water cannons, first of all, now with tear gas, and with mass arrests. What is going on is the party in power, the Dream Party, the majority, they're called Dream, I believe, party, the majority party, applied. Well, let me step back from the EU. They are trying to pass a new law on foreign agents, basically, people who are spying for the enemy kind of thing, right? And they're requiring any organization in Georgia that gets 20% or more of its funding from abroad has to declare itself as an agent of a foreign government or agent of foreign influence, which basically means they've got to register and declare themselves. It basically means they've got to admit publicly that they're basically spies for Georgia's enemies. It is a law that the Russians passed back, I think, 2012. The Russians have used it quite effectively to stifle dissent at home. Remember, now the Russians have pretty much shushed everybody out of the country. They've either arrested them, killed them, or pushed them out of the country. And the Georgian people are very concerned that basically their government is taking a page from Russia. This law is already, I don't know the Georgian parliament, but from what I read, it passed the first step. There's two more steps. The experts say it will absolutely pass the next two steps. The Georgian president said she will veto, but there is enough votes to override the veto. So it will be, at this point, it will become law. The Georgian people are very strongly in favor of joining the European Union. Georgia applied to the European Union about a month after Ukraine was invaded. So it was March of last year, Georgia applied. And unlike Ukraine and Moldova, Georgia was not granted whatever candidate status or whatever they call it, which is basically the next step to joining the EU, even though that step can be, Turkey, I think, has been waiting 20 years or something. I mean, it doesn't mean you're getting into the EU, but you need to pass that step. Georgia did not pass that step. They got denied because Georgia has been having serious trouble with its democracy, and they've actually been falling back in terms of their democracy. The people are protesting, because they just don't like the law. They look at it as a Soviet-style law, as a Russian-style law. They know that their government has been a little too close to Russia. Georgia historically, as I said, used to be a former Soviet republic. So, there's got to be some ambivalence there. You've also got the issue of back, what was it, 2008? I want to see if I've got it here. Otherwise, I can guesstimate. But 2008, Putin invaded Georgia, and they lost a chunk of their territory to Russia. So they're not happy about that. And finally, there's more about this, but finally the people are upset because, two more reasons. One, the newspapers and a lot of the nonprofit organizations, charities, you folks abroad would call them NGOs, a lot of them get money from abroad because Georgia is not really a rich country. Well, they would have to declare themselves as foreign agents just because they're getting funded from abroad. but they're actually civil society organizations. They're democratic organizations, meaning small d Democrat, right? Animal rights, civil rights. I mean, you name it, right? Newspapers, they would have to declare themselves as basically enemies of the state. They don't like that. The final reason, and this is already proving to be true, is the Georgian people are worried that this is going to kill their bid to join the European Union. They are hoping, even though they got turned down now, they hope to apply again, right? And the thank you, A.A. Tucker there. They are hoping, oh, hey, Sasha, I didn't see that you were here today. Sasha's a very good Ukrainian political blogger here on YouTube. Sasha Rahelo? I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong, but he's, hold on, where is this? I'm going to see if I'm going to pin the comment there so people can see Sasha's account, and you guys should go follow him. He's very good. He's a Ukrainian who's been doing a lot of reporting on what's going on. So he's a good guy. Anyway, good to see you. The European Union, so they're afraid this is going to really kill their bid to join the EU. European Union came out today, the head of the European Union, and one of the top people, and said this is inimical with joining the EU. This kind of a law does not fly with joining the EU. I would argue that gives the people even more reason to protest, because their very fear is being spelled out to them by the EU itself, saying, yeah, you're protesting because you think this will stop you from joining the EU. It will. So this is a big deal across the board. What is interesting about it is it is reminding people of what happened in Ukraine in 2014, where you had the Ukrainians developing a closer relationship with the EU, hoping to join someday. I believe the Ukrainians were about to sign some kind of a trade partnership or something with the EU. Putin, I wouldn't just take Putin at his word that this is why he invaded, because look, Putin wanted to take Ukraine. Putin doesn't think Ukraine's a real country. Doesn't like the Ukrainians, and wanted to wipe out their country and make it Russia. Okay, so I wouldn't take Putin at 100%, but Putin claimed part of his reason for invading was because the Ukraine was getting too close to the EU and starting this kind of trade relationship they were going to do. The Ukrainians, in response, and so their government then kind of pulled the deal. Their president, who was too close to Putin, and they rose up and overthrew the president, and then had another democratic election, because this is where the tankies, all the far left and the MAGA right always try to say, and that's when Ukraine had a coup and the United States installed a government. No, that's when the people of Ukraine overthrew their pro-Russian government and had another democratic election and picked somebody else. And then a couple of years later, they had another democratic election and they picked Zelensky, and the elections were fair. So there were no dictators. If anything, the one quasi dictator was overthrown. Just to remind folks of that. So in any case, there's some similarities here. There's some similarities here to what's going on. Thank you, Tom Clark, for that, and Purnell, and what's going on in Georgia, because you've got people rising up and basically trying to overthrow the government, potentially overthrow the government because of the country overall wanting closer ties with I wouldn't just say with Europe, but meaning with the rest of Europe. Georgians see themselves as Europeans, Ukrainians see themselves as Europeans, and their pro-Russian government does not. So the final interesting point with that is, which is really weird to me, actually, and I still don't quite understand this. I've got a feeling that the Russians have had a hand in this in Georgia. I've just got a feeling that part of the reason they're passing the law is because they know damn well that if they pass this law, the EU is never letting them in. But the Russians would love them to pass this law because it helps them clamp down on the opposition, and the opposition doesn't like the opposition likes the West. They don't like the Russians. Thank you, Purnell, for the Gamer Cat. But also, the Russians would love this because the Russians don't want Georgia joining the EU any more than they want Ukraine joining the EU. So I kind of wonder whether the Russians aren't behind passing this law as a way to kill Georgia's chances of getting there. The one thing I don't understand is Georgia's government, the same party that is passing this law, was in favor of joining the EU. So I don't get what's going on there with that. Nonetheless, Georgia's been sliding backwards. It ain't great. it ain't great. Oh, somebody's Elaine is joining us in. Hello, Georgian here. We are fighting against the so-called agent law. Georgians don't want Russia. Exactly. That is a perfect summary of what I was telling folks. Exactly. And exactly somebody else, some other Ukrainian, and thank you. Ukraine didn't want to be under Russian pressure and Russian government. So interesting similarities in both, which makes it even more relevant just to discuss it in the context of Ukraine, but also it's a big story going on right now. And just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it. Now, let me see. I think, there's one last story I wanted to tell you. I know I'm going late tonight, but as always, since I'm going late, we will go late, meaning I will still go for half an hour of questions. The last story, and I thought this was kind of obnoxious, and I wanted to, don't ever accuse me of not criticizing my own government. Thank you. Who is that? Thank you for the coral there, Ellie. Oh, Ellie, hi. Thank you for that. So listen to this. Pancakes. Thank you, Chazak. Per the New York Times, the Pentagon is blocking the Biden administration from sharing with the International Criminal Court in The Hague evidence gathered by U.S. intelligence agencies about Russian atrocities in Ukraine. American military leaders oppose helping the court investigate Russians because they fear setting a precedent that might help pave the way for it to prosecute Americans. The rest of the administration, including intelligence agencies and the state and justice departments, favor sharing the evidence with the court, the officials said. President Biden has yet to resolve the impasse. It just, first of all, that just looks so freaking bad. I mean, obviously on its face. Second of all, give me a break. I mean, what is stopping us from helping the criminal court give them the evidence they need? And if they ever try to come after American soldiers and we don't think it's justified, you know what we do? We say, we're not going to give you evidence to go after us. I mean, I know the world won't like it, but how freaking hard is that to do? I mean, what, you know what I mean? Just how difficult is that to do? Thank you, Carlos. I am hoping Biden overrules the Pentagon here, but I think the Pentagon is just really incredibly stupid in terms of what they're doing, because again, it sets a precedent, but it's not a legal precedent. It's a political precedent. It will always be up to the U.S. whether we give our intelligence to the International Criminal Court. And like I said, if they're going after us and we think it's wrong, or we just don't want, because I know the U.S. doesn't want to submit ourselves to their jurisdiction, I think in part because we don't trust a lot of the world, to be fair. But maybe we also think we've done some things wrong. Who knows? We just say we're not going to do it in the future. We're not going to give it to you if you come after us, but we'll give it to you to go after Russia. Big deal. Right? I mean, anyway, I just think it's also really tacky and it looks really bad. And my God, I mean, literally coming out and putting out a statement and saying, well, we're just not going to help the International Criminal Court go after war crimes in Ukraine. How could the U.S. government even do that? Anyway, pisses me off. All right. So thank you for the pause there. Final little thing I always forget to mention is I do have a store set up as well at represent.com. It's a really neat store, mostly Ukraine. Actually, I think all Ukrainian themed stuff. And half the proceeds from that store also get channeled back into Ukraine. Go check it out at store.aravosis.com. But again, check it out. Link in my profile on TikTok will give you all of my links, my Discord, my Patreon, my store, my LinkedIn, if you want to see who I am. And for you guys, the aravosis.com link at the bottom will give you all of them as well. All right, let's do questions and answers. On TikTok, use the Q&A button that is in my profile for your questions or comments. And the rest of you obviously use the boxes at the bottom. I certainly don't object. As I said, keep the gifts coming. They help me out. And you guys have already been really generous today. So thank you for that. So let's get rolling. Why don't I start with TikTok questions? Because, wipe my glasses. I'll start with some TikTok questions because we've already had a few of the, actually, I hope I didn't miss any of you guys on, the Problem with the Men Left Behind. Oh, yeah, Brave Cobra, very funny. All right, yeah, let me pull up a TikTok. Yeah, well, this is my Starbucks Chicago mug with my tea, and my water is in my cool Ukraine mug that my sister got me off of Amazon, which I love, and I like it too because it's got writing on both sides, so it's kind of nice because when you drink it, like for the show, people can see it's my Ukraine mug, so it's very nice. Nummy, nummy, nummy. Whew. So, all right, let's start with TikTok here. TikTok. Have I been in Russia now? Why in God's name? Any American who steps foot in Russia now, unless you're working for the US government, have no excuse. Because after what they did to Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan, if you go to Russia now, they're going to take you, they're going to kidnap you. And you have no excuse. Again, unless you're working for the US government. So no, I haven't been to Russia recently. I've been to Russia twice. I've been to Russia and then I've been to the Soviet Union. But I wouldn't dare step foot in that country now. You kidding? Just so they could kidnap me? Please. When do you think the Ukrainian counteroffensive will get underway? Asks V. Jader. Yesterday, there was news. Sorry, my allergies again. Yesterday, there was news that U.S. officials were saying they believe the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which is the big Ukrainian attack, is going to start in 6 to 8 weeks. So that would be the end of April or middle of May. Thank you, Woodworker, for the dancing cactus. So there you go. That's the thinking. Now, again, I'm not sure. It always makes me worry, like, why would we say that publicly? I just can't imagine we'd say that publicly. I just think it's a little weird. So hopefully that's not when it's happening because I'd hate to tell the Russians. So there's got to be a little bit of disinformation, you'd think. Julius with a super chat question. Do you think that Ukraine can win back all of its territory, including Crimea? It's a huge, massive land, which will cost many lives and treasure. We kind of got into this yesterday because somebody was asking me how I thought the war would end. And I said, I think Ukraine could get all of its land back if we gave them what they need. But we're not going to give them what they need because we're afraid of Vladimir Putin and we're afraid of making him angry because we think if we make him angry, he's going to use his nuclear weapons. I don't. But somebody scared Biden into thinking that. We think it might be General Milley. So currently, no, Ukraine cannot get back all of its territory because we're not giving them enough. We should have, and even worse, we dragged it out, right? I mean, not only are we not giving them everything they need, but we dragged it out. We've given them a lot, but I give this example of having cancer or something. And, you have cancer, and in America, at least, these things are crazy expensive. Cancer treatment, I said $100,000. I mean, cancer treatment can cost you $2 million. People were literally maxing out their health insurance policies in America before Obamacare because they were able to have these maximum lifetime limits on how much benefits they could give you. And people that had cancer, because it's so expensive in this country, would max out their health insurance, and their health insurance would cut them off mid-cancer because they said, well, you spent too much money. People would literally spend $2 million on their cancer because that's what it cost. Well, it's like having cancer. And let's say it cost $100,000 for the first treatment. And the doctor says, let's spend $60,000. and you go, well, but that's not the whole treatment I need. 60,000 won't cure me. It's going to come back. And the people around the doctor go, what are you complaining about? $65,000 is a lot of money. And you go, it is a lot of money, but it's not enough to cure me. We have been giving Ukraine a ton of money and equipment, but we haven't been giving Ukraine enough to win. And it's been on purpose because we've been afraid. I think Biden has been afraid of Putin. And I think probably the French and the Germans as well. Macron and Schultz have been afraid of Putin and afraid of antagonizing Putin. So they really don't want Ukraine to get Crimea back. They don't, because they're afraid of Putin. And I question whether they want Ukraine to get the rest of the territory back, right? So again, to show you on the map, Crimea is the territory the Russians stole in 2014. Remember when I was talking about the Russians invading in 2014? And the rest of this is the territory that they've stolen this time in the last year. Ukraine can get it back. They need more weapons, but also they needed more weapons. Had we gotten them better weapons earlier and not dragged this out, tanks. We just approved tanks a month ago. Well, the American tanks may not get there for a year or two. The European tanks are slowly arriving, right? It's going to take a long time for the tanks to get there. So not only did we wait a year to even say yes to the tanks, now it's taking another year to even get them there. Well, had we started this a year ago, maybe the tanks would be there by now, right? But they're not. HIMARS, we waited forever to give them HIMARS and then slowly gave them a couple HIMARS a month, right? Rather than just giving the damn HIMARS. Longer range missiles. We refuse to give them longer range missiles. We talked in depth last night about why that matters and why that would be helpful, because longer range missiles might antagonize Putin. I mean, and they even admit it on this one. Well, okay, sure, it might, but guess what? It means it's going to take longer for Ukraine to win. And now Ukraine's running out of ammunition. The international community, there's opposition growing in the US. There's probably opposition growing in Europe. We've got a presidential election in 2 years that could be a disaster. I mean, if you don't give Ukraine what it needs to win, then you're not going to win. And you're going to drag it out. And then guess what happens? Then some other thing intervenes and Ukraine loses. No, it's really screwy. Just really screwy. Elisa. Elise has a Georgia question. Put on my glasses here. Georgia's government is largely in the thrall of a Putinist oligarch, Ivanishvili, richest guy in the country and former prime minister. Head of the ruling party, has a bizarre castle like a supervillain, scary guy. Okay, there you go. Well, then that probably, that's what I'm telling you. I admit I am not a Georgia expert, right? I mean, I've studied all this stuff over the years, but not recently. Georgia hasn't been in the news. Thank you for the mustache, Jay Ticker, and Carrie for the owl. But I just have to wonder, like I said, if what's going on in Georgia, the fact that it will kill Georgia's bid to become part of the European Union, to join the European Union, and the fact that Russia really doesn't want that to happen in its former hostages like Georgia and Ukraine, whether that's not what's going on here, that the Russians did something to make sure this law would get passed. It just feels like it. And that would be one more reason what Elise said with the influential oligarch, the influential billionaire. Who is that? Is it Purnell? Oh, it is Purnell. Thank you, Purnell. Purnell's going wild on the America. It looks like an America judo outfit. Oh, boxing robe. Oh, it's boxing. Okay. Sorry, I was thinking it was judo. Either way, it's cool. Thank you. Copies. Oh, thank you. Who was that? Panya. Thank you, Panya, for the gift. Copies is saying from Czechoslovakia. Oops, sorry. You can tell how old I am when I make a mistake and say you're from Czechoslovakia. From the Czech Republic, excuse me. I have seen news earlier today about Ukrainian armed forces having pushed the Russians back north about 3 kilometers, like 2 miles, and south about 4 kilometers, maybe 3 miles of Bakhmut. If it confirms, cool. So actually, 1 second here. Thank you, Leanne, for the galaxy there. I did see that on a corner of my eye. About Ukrainian armies having pushed. Okay, so basically they're saying that the Ukrainians may have, thank you, Panya, the Ukrainians may have actually even pushed the Russians back a small amount in the last day, which is actually interesting because, right, all the news we were seeing was the Russians are closing in, This is Bakhmut, the town that doesn't matter, by the way, but that the Russians were closing in, and now it looks like the Ukrainians are pushing back. Now, thank you, Doc, for the paper crane. One thing I mentioned yesterday as to why the Ukrainians keep fighting for this town that doesn't matter is because the Russians want it so badly that they're now throwing in some of their best troops. They're throwing in their most elite Wagner mercenary troops, and they're now throwing in a bunch of their air troops as well that are their elite troops. So basically the Russians are now having to use their best troops in a battle that is not to their advantage. Bakhmut, the Russians are dying 5-1 to the Ukrainians. So for every Ukrainian that dies in the battle in Bakhmut, 5 Russians die. So the Ukrainians are fighting going, we don't want to die, but if we've got to fight the Russians, let's fight them in a town where the Russians are getting crushed. NATO says it's 5-1. Ukrainians are saying 7-1. But I'll trust NATO on this. NATO is saying 5-1. So yeah, I mean, so even better if the Ukrainians are pushing them back a little, because the Russians are so desperate, they're going to put even more men in, which is great. Absolutely great. And the reason it's great is not only because the Russians are basically eliminating their own troops, but the Russians are making it harder and harder for them to do any other offensives as time goes on, because if they use all their best troops now, who are they going to use to do the next offensive in a month or two? Their troops are killed, they're wounded, they're exhausted, their equipment's gone, right? They're going to have to get more men. Thank you for the guitar there, Gillighty. They're going to have to recruit more men. And then when we recruit more men, what are they going to do? They're replacing their best troops that they got killed in Bakhmut with these new guys who don't know what they're doing and have terrible training, because we know that the Russians have shitty training. They have poor equipment. They don't even have enough equipment for these guys. So again, great. If you can knock out Russia's top troops and replace them with really crappy replacements who are just guys who don't know what they're doing, good. Let that be the next offensive. So on multiple levels, I think it does make sense what Ukraine's doing. Yeah, I don't know. So I was looking here. She has to keep them on the winter. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know about that. Who's that? Oh, Purnell again. Thank you, Purnell. Appreciate those multiple boxing robes. Ernest is saying, a few decades ago, I remember that Russia has to keep pumping oil in the winter or their entire oil infrastructure will freeze and can't restart until summer. Oh, interesting. Oh, you mean that may affect them in terms of if demand is down or whatever. There was something today. Yeah, Andy is asking, did I hear anything about Poland sending MiGs to Ukraine? There was some report today. Again, the problem is all of these reports, take them with a grain of salt because they're usually, we'd like to, we're willing to, but we're not. Poland is willing to, interested in, wants to send its remaining MiG fighter jets to Ukraine, the same type of jets, more or less, that the Ukrainians use. The number I saw was somewhere between maybe 21 or 26 MiG fighter jets the Poles have that they could provide the Ukrainians, but it wasn't a Poland is providing. It was one of these. Are they? Okay, because the article I saw was very is, but what did find Carla? Find the article. You may be right, Carla. But somebody find me the article and look at the exact language of what is said. Because typically in this war, what we get from everybody is we're gonna, if everybody else does, and it doesn't happen. So I'd be very, considering NATO and everybody else doesn't want to provide Ukraine jets at all, I'd be very surprised. Find the article. I'm just saying, again, I'm happy to be wrong because I hope it's true. Hold on, let me find it. But I've learned too many times that you've got to, Poland MiGs. You've got to look at articles to actually, well, they delivered, we know that. I told you that they delivered them in secret last year. That we know, or well, we think. Trying to find. I'm not even finding anything for today. I'm finding a week ago. Poland looking into giving was a week ago. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, I'm not finding anything. Poland, MiGs, Ukraine. I mean, there's like nothing today. So find an article, folks, and I'll believe you. Yeah, but I mean, I heard today that I was a billionaire. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it doesn't. Remember, folks, you've always got to find the source, make sure it's a good source, and then see what the source actually said. It might be true, but I don't believe it. Again, find me. Oh, hey, Julius. Now that looks like you may have wanted to pose a question, Julius. Thank you for that. Feel free to jump in and pose it because I'm wondering if you tried and failed. That's correct. Black American weighing in and saying, well, his name is the Black American. I'm not calling him a Black American. Ukraine needs longer range missiles to continue their past successes of destroying Russian rear ammunition storage and command posts. Bingo. And they've also been going after Russian barracks where remember they did that on New Year's Eve. They destroyed these barracks that several hundred Russian troops were in. And the best part was they all were in the barracks on New Year's Eve because they were ordered to watch Putin's speech. So they made them all get in the same building and the Ukrainians bombed it. And of course, the Russians, being bigger idiots, decided to store ammunition apparently either right outside the building or in the basement of the building. So when the Ukrainians hit it, the entire building blew up and they killed several hundred Russian troops. I mean, crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, Julius. Let's see. I saw Julius. The question is, sorry, I'm scrolling down now. Did Julius actually have a question? No question. Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Julius. I mean, again, if you meant to have a question, feel free just to write it. If you were just being ridiculously generous, thank you. That works too. What else we got here? Let me let me go back to my TikTok questions. Poppy almost got the bracelet today. She was in a, it was a very, it was a sad story for Poppy. It was happy for Bright Eyes. Thank you, Perfect, for that. Well, not really. TikToker is asking, is there any new news on Sweden and Finland joining NATO? No. They are supposed to meet with Turkey tomorrow, March 9th, and have further discussions. The Turks are being jerks about this. It's not clear at all that Turkey's going to do anything until its big elections in May. If anything, they might, you're welcome, on Twitter, on YouTube there. They might let Finland in, maybe, right? But Sweden, they're playing games with the Swedes and trying to pretend, oh, the Swedes haven't done anything they promised. The Swedes did 100% of what was promised and what was agreed to, and the Turks just decided to change the deal at the last minute because Erdogan's a dictator. Erdogan wants to be reelected. By going after the Swedes, by claiming the Swedes are supporting terrorism against Turkey, blah, and the Swedes hate the Koran. It's just a great way to build up support at home while he's screwing over NATO. And somebody really ought to hold that guy responsible for it. But no, so we have no, and Hungary is also playing games. The Hungarians, though, it's thought that once and if Turkey votes, the Hungarians will probably cave. But the Hungarians saw what the Turks were doing, and last week they thought, hey, maybe we could screw around with NATO too. Honestly, I swear to God, both countries should just be kicked out. They really should be. I mean, Turkey matters, but I guarantee you, Turkey's going to join Russia's bloc? Really? Good luck with that. Because also, Turkey keeps wanting to join the EU. Screw it. Then just take away their EU application too when they join Russia. And say, you know what? You want to join the wonderful coalition of Russia, Belarus, Libya, and Syria? Congratulations. One hell of a trading bloc and lots of cool places to go on vacation. Erdogan and Istanbul. Have fun next year in Belarus. But no, this is at some point, you're dealing with hard asses. You've got to treat them like hard asses. The whole wall. No, definitely not the whole wall, Brave Cobra. Just a piece of it. It's the piece that's in the picture. Yes, the whole wall. Actually, I wish I could have gotten a huge chunk of it. Are you kidding? The thing is, we had the plane to get it back. You just couldn't break I was talking again about the Berlin Wall when I was in Berlin in 1989, when the wall was coming down in early December, and you could go and get pieces, but it was literally a sidewalk. It's cement. It's as if someone took a sidewalk and put it standing up. You couldn't break this. How do you break a sidewalk, right? Very difficult. And it was pissing me off because the nicest colors were in the middle and you couldn't break it. And I was flying with the US military, which means I had no weight limits. So I could bring whatever I wanted on that plane. And had I been able to find a chunk of the wall this big, I would have literally been hunched over. I would have ruined my back for a month to carry that thing. But alas, I got cool pieces, but my pieces, I'm selling one this big and I've got 3 other ones that are this big that are really cool, that have color on them and stuff. And again, it's fun because I broke them off myself, but nonetheless, I still think back to it and go, I should have found some German with a sledgehammer and been like, here's $100. Cut me a chunk of the wall. What do you do? Anyway, Rachel, Rachel put a post on Migs in the Ukraine chat. I'm assuming on Discord, you mean, no date. Just Duda saying they're ready to hand over immediately. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let me pull this up then. If it's in the Discord. That was what I read, and that's why I'm telling you that's one of those things where you've got to read more carefully. I'm not saying you, Rachel, but you, the public. All right, let me pull this up. Here we go. So this is from Polish, like the Polish press agency. And I'm going to open this in a browser so it will automatically translate it. Translate. President Duda on CNN. Poland is ready to hand over its MiGs to Ukraine. Poland is the rest of the. Now, this is probably Polish translated into English. the rest of the MiG-29s that we have in Poland and that are now serving in our Air Force, we are ready to deliver these planes, and I'm sure that Ukraine would be ready to use them immediately. Yeah. Guess what that means? He's not sending them, right? Ready. I'm ready to turn the planes over. It does not mean I am turning the planes over. NATO has to agree if he's going to give them MiGs. NATO is not going to agree. Biden is not going to agree. And I wonder about Macron and Schultz. And I also wonder if that's part of the reason Biden's not going to agree. But I also think Biden himself is just chicken about this. He's not going to do it. He might do it eventually, but not until all of NATO agrees. That's what I was trying to tell you. It doesn't matter. He was ready to send Polish MiGs to Ukraine a year ago. It was April, I think, of last year. Remember when that big story came out and he was going to send 200 MiGs or whatever it was, and we all got excited, and then the Germans and the Americans cut the deal? That's my point here isn't to knock Poland. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's great what he said. The point here is they ain't going. All he's saying is he's willing to, and guess what? It means all the other NATO people have to agree, and they're not going to agree. So why are you so negative? I'm telling you the truth. Why am I so negative? Because I don't lie to you. That's why I'm so negative. Poland is not sending MiGs to Ukraine. Right. Find the article. But Poland's own president didn't say they're giving. He said, we're willing to give. All right. I will look at the Guardian too here. Again, I hope you guys are right, but so far, I ain't seeing anything that is saying you are right. Poland, Guardian, News, come on. 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Okay, none of this is helping here. Let's go to News. News. Guardian, where the hell would it be? On the homepage? Nothing on the homepage. Lovely. Search button, and I'm going to find stories from like Poland, Ukraine. Let's do that. Yep. Ain't nothing here, kiddos. So, okay, I'm stopping. We're moving on. We're moving on, but it ain't there. So I very much hope they get the MiGs, and someday they probably will once it's too late, because that's the way we do things. The Julius on Patreon, the $25 a month people, we get together once a month and hang out, on video together and chat. And then the highest level, the highest level is coffee if you're in town, if you're in DC. Otherwise it's a once a month chat one-on-one with video that we do via the Discord. And I've got one guy that actually is doing it, Arctic Legacy, who's very generous. And we hang out once a month for like half hour or longer and shoot the breeze, whatever he wants to talk about. I mean, politics we actually have a lot of stuff in common too on other political stuff that we've been talking about, and my interest in native stuff of Canada and Alaska and stuff like that. So thank you, Elle, for the hearts. Agnieszka, are you checking? Yeah, check and see what you find there. But like I said, I just read the statement from the Polish president, and, it says Duda is ready to, and that's great. But that means he's waiting for NATO to say yes. And NATO ain't going to say yes for a while. All right. Let me find we'll do another question or two here. We got 9, it's quarter after. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. Actually, wait a minute. Yes, I did see this. This is from Autumn Spectre. I see that the U.S. Air Force is evaluating whether Ukrainian jets can deploy AIM-120 AMRAAMs, basically American missiles that are on our fighter jets, whether they can be attached to Ukrainian jets. Could these be a game changer for the war, or are SAMs more important, surface-to-air missiles? I don't know. That is over my head military question. I always say I'm more of a foreign policy guy than a military guy. My background is foreign policy. I mean, my education, but also my work. If any of the military folks know, how much of a game changer would it be if the Ukrainians are able to actually fit the American missiles, I guess what is it, the AMRAAMs, on the Ukrainian MiGs. Now JDAMs on MiGs that's interesting, because the JDAMs, I was actually going to tell you the story and I took it off. As of 2 days ago, was it 2 days ago they arrived? I thought it was they arrived. They arrived. They're starting to arrive. There was a confirmation 2 days ago about the JDAMs, and I don't remember if it was they were already approved. I thought previously, but the American JDAMs are coming, which basically are, again, I Googled and learned about this. Basically, it's a way of taking a dumb bomb and making it smart. So you take a bomb that you typically would just shoot and it kind of lands and you hope it hits, and you attach this thing to the bomb that I think has like, wings basically and stuff. Then, and using GPS and also inertial guidance, it will much more, it becomes a smart bomb. So you can hit the target much more easily using it rather than it just being. So JDAMs can go on the bombs that you shoot from planes, sort of air missile, air to either air to ground or air to air. Anyway, let's see. Interesting, but I know those got approved. Yeah, and they may even, like I said, they may even be on their way. What else we got here? Up, beep, 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 beep. You see, 2,500 pounds air to ground. Well, this was actually any of you. Let me actually see, because a number of you military folks around here, or military geeks who know this stuff. We were talking the other day about this, and we were asking what role air was playing in the battle right now. Is it playing any role right now? Thank you for the hanging lights, Disney. As far as the Ukrainian Air Force, or not really? Because part of the question then would be even like attaching things, giving the Ukrainians bombs that fit on their planes. Does that matter, or are they just not really using planes as much because both sides have got the surface to air missiles and everything else that are taking the planes down? What about that, Daniel? JDAMs used apparently. You're saying JDAMs are being used apparently? More verbs would help you. Anybody? I'm just curious, because some of you guys I know this stuff. There's a video of a JDAM strike in Ukraine. It was 2 days. Let me look this up. It was 2 days ago that there was confirmation on the JDAMs in Ukraine. Let me pull this up. Maybe, I don't know if the confirmation was they're being used. They're now in operation. That's what it was. 2 days ago, an American general confirmed that JDAM smart bombs are now operational in Ukraine. That was what I read. Okay. I had it in my news and I struck it because I knew there was already so much other stuff. Somebody's asking, have you heard about the Polish MiGs? Yes, we had kind of a fight about the Polish MiGs about 10 minutes ago. The problem with the Polish MiGs so far is that the problem with the Polish MiGs so far is it looks like the Polish president is offering them, but the NATO has to approve, is probably what's happening. So he's saying Poland is ready to provide them. Well, the question is whether they're heading or already. There was something 2 days ago about the JDAMs ER. Now, first of all, 2 days ago, they're saying that JDAMs are operational. The JDAMs ER, I thought I read, no, the JDAMs ER are the ones that are arrived 3 weeks ago. Yeah. JDAM ER, precision guided bombs, arrived in Ukraine about 3 weeks ago, according to the general. Yeah. So that's already, yep, they're there. No, and they're, again, it said they're operational and being used, which is great. So excellent. No, that's good. That's good. Oh, but that's what I was asking. Anybody who knows sort of the Air Force aspect of this, is it much of a game changer, or are the Ukrainians just not using their Air Force as much? Because we just don't hear about it. Just curious. I'll look at another question while anybody ponders that who might know an answer. Doop. Okay. Chris King says, huge game changer for them. Their Air Force isn't super strong. Interesting. Well, I guess it probably also depends on the distance. Now, I read they go 45 kilometers, I think. It was like 27 miles or something. Again, I had it in my notes and then deleted it. would JDAMs typically be used aircraft to aircraft? Are they used aircraft to air to ground? Because if they're air to ground, that gets interesting, I guess, depending if you've got any high value targets within 45 to 60 miles. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. But would they typically be air to ground? Air to ground. Okay. Okay. So then the question becomes whether you've got the high value targets. I mean, what kind of a target would you typically use in Ukraine? Because already in Ukraine, they've got missiles that go 60 miles with the HIMARS. They've got missiles that go 60 miles, right? So if the JDAMs go 50 miles, what are you able to hit and why that the HIMARS can't? That's my question. I'm looking at your guys' comments as we're asking this. Oh, les gens demandent la carte. Voilà. Bon, la carte. La voilà. Bon, ok, ça suffit. Way bigger bang. Oh, that's interesting. Well, it can be everything from, I guess here's the problem I've got with this. Okay. I mean, it's flexible and can be everything from a bunker buster to anti-personnel. But my question is, because of the HIMARS, the Russians have already moved their high value bunkers, their command and control, one assumes, and we know their ammunition beyond 50 or 60 miles, right? So if that's the case, what does JDAM let them hit? Because the Ukrainians, and also from what I've read, the Russians and the Ukrainians both basically control their own airspace. So that meaning the Russians are controlling the airspace of the Russian occupied territory in Ukraine. So it's not like the Ukrainians can get any closer to shoot these missiles. So what are they hitting? What are they hitting that a HIMARS isn't hitting is my point. If they're going the same distance as the HIMARS. And anyway, that's my question. Yep. 1 second. I'll answer it. Jamie, I'll answer that in 1 second. I just wanted to see if folks weighing in. I pulled it on the screen so I won't forget it though. I don't think it'll help them if they don't use their Air Force. JDAMs could hit, then provide them. JDAMs could hit them, provide, then stay far away from anti-aircraft, guide bomb. It'll be quicker. HIMARS are much smaller bomb. Okay, that's interesting. They need aircraft. I thought JDAM would drop from a plane. They are. We're talking about HIMARS versus JDAM because HIMARS can go up to 60 miles. So I was saying if JDAMs go 50 miles, what's the advantage? Because, by the way, it's not just bigger bombs. In principle, the HIMARS targets have been moved out of HIMARS range, right? The Russians have moved their ammunition out of range, for example. They're supposed to have. So wouldn't they be out of range for the JDAMs as well? All right. You're still not answering my question, guys. Sorry. Maybe you're not understanding my question. With HIMARS, the Russians moved their high value targets out of range. JDAMs doesn't even go as far as HIMARS. How can JDAMs hit a high value target if all the high value targets have already moved further out of range? That's my question. It does assume Russia is competent. Poppy is saying that is true. Russia may just be stupid and leave high value targets in range. But that's my question. Higher you go, the farther they go. Planes go farther, but Russia controls the airspace. We talked about this. Russia controls the airspace because of all the anti-aircraft missiles and everything. So I guess that's my other question. How far can a Ukrainian fighter jet actually go inside occupied territory? Because supposedly the Russians control the airspace. In terms of their own occupied territory, I don't think that's true. What I've read is the territory the Russians occupy, they've got ample air defenses to shoot down the Ukrainians, but only in the territory they occupy. All right. I don't want to beat this to death here, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. They go faster. So maybe, who knows? Whatever. I mean, hey, more bombs. I mean, even if it goes the same distance as the HIMARS, bigger bomb. I mean, maybe they can zoom in and out. Well, okay, yeah, but the Ukrainians aren't going to be using it to attack Russia. Callum, you know what I mean? They're not going to use it for that. They can't use them for that. We're not going to let them use it to hit Russian territory. Um, all right. Okay. I'm just curious. So that's fine. All right. Well, that's good though. I mean, it's very good, obviously. Um, I like these discussions because a lot of you guys know what's going on. So it's interesting to sort of get the feedback. So thank you. Um, just seeing what else you guys are saying here. There's a version that goes up to 80 kilometers. Okay. Well, that's good. Well, that's what we're talking about though, right? That would be 50 miles, 45 miles. I think that's what folks are talking about because they all said around 50 miles. Yeah. Way more destructive than the HIMARS. Okay. Interesting. All right. All right. Well, they're operational, which is great. Let me see. Anything else here? We may call it quits. We're already at 7:25 here. I don't want to like belabor this. I was going to say beleaguer this. Hopefully, they're not beleaguering it either. All right. All right. Anyway, all right. I'll do a quick summary of the stories we covered today, and then we'll call it quits. All right. Are they laser guided though? That's funny because we were just talking yesterday on whether the Ukrainians had anything that was laser guided. So that's interesting. Are they laser guided? Yeah. Nope. Thanks. You're welcome, Rat Attack. I enjoyed it anyway. So, yes. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. The Moab. Yeah. You mean wasn't that the one we dropped on, or we tried to drop on Osama? The only thing is, I mean, the Russians aren't really underground though, are they? So that doesn't really help in that case, but yeah, I can imagine. That's true. Off of the Russian toilets and TVs and trunks to their hood. JDAMs cost 25,000 per bomb. That's not very much though. That's interesting. That's interesting. I guess I don't remember how much the HIMARS missiles cost, but that's pretty cheap actually. Oh, the JDAMs. Yeah, the JDAMs. Yeah. Well, the JDAMs though is because the JDAMs aren't a bomb. The JDAMs are the attachment that goes onto the bomb, right? So are you just talking about the attachment? Right? Which is why it's not as costly because it's not a bomb. Unless I'm mixing things up here. Super chat and super sticker from who? I'm going to scroll up and see. Oh, that's right. I just see Agnieszka. Thank you for the super sticker. I did see that. We were in the middle of talking and I meant to acknowledge it. So thank you for that. Now your last name, I'm just going to guess here. I'm trying to get better at my Polish names, but that's what I'm saying. Agnieszka is my guess. Kuzmierz. Well, here's the thing. In English, you'd say Kuzmiersik. We'd say sick in English. Kuzmiersik? I don't know. That's my guess. Or would you say Kuzmier? The S with the thing, I don't know whether that's a sh in Polish. And the CZ is almost making me wonder if it's a zh or something, like Kuzmierzyk or something like that. I don't know. All right, just my guess. But anyway, thank you for that. Oh, here we go, Jamie. Yeah, there we go. Thank you for that. Do you think Trump and Putin could work together to get Trump back in power? Not legal, but you know what Trump's like. Putin needs this to win. I mean, Putin could certainly try. He probably will try. Probably. Why wouldn't he? Right? Thank you, dear Benji. Meaning just the kind of crap he's done before, trying to break in and steal, emails and all that stuff from people, all the disinformation stuff. Remember, they were setting up all kinds of fake, pretending to be. I mean, the one that stuck in my mind was they were pretending to be left-wing black voters who were disappointed with the Democrats and this kind of crap. And they were actually Russians. Like really, I mean, just disgusting stuff they did. Gun groups or anti-gun groups they were pretending to be too. So certainly Putin will try. Yeah, exactly. Peace on Mars is saying Putin will try. Putin will try, absolutely. To influence the election. And why not try to help Trump? I mean, Trump's closer to Putin than anybody you're going to get. I mean, you're never going to get an American president ever again. That's as pro Putin as Donald Trump. So yeah, I'm okay with the Senate voting down the DC crime bill. I live in DC. Crime is out of control. I've been in this town for 40 years. Crime is out of control in this town. It is scary how bad crime is in this town. We've had 6 attempts to break into my building in 6 weeks. 4 of them, I think, were successful. I mean, horrifically scary. And my city, we're not as bad as San Francisco, but we try. As far as this kind of crap. This town is so big on helping criminals. It drives me up the wall. So I couldn't care less. I mean it. I am a tough on crime. I don't want to say I almost gave my political affiliation. We're not doing that because this is Ukraine, but no. At the very least, crime is out of control in Washington, and I'm guessing nationwide it probably is too, but it's out of control in this town. I haven't seen it like this in 40 years. This is not the time to be like lowering penalties and all this kind of crap. No. Also, and politically, put that aside. Politically, it's idiotic politically. There's no way Democrats can agree to this politically. It's just dangerous. Yeah, you just can't. And politics matters, or you don't win re-election, and then you only get the bad guys winning the elections. Anyway, there's my take on that, since I don't get to say those things on Twitter because the Twitter gods would get mad at me. The Twitter Democrats would hate me if I said that, but I don't particularly care. But you guys love me, and I know half of you will agree with me. Yeah, Biden said he won't veto it. Yeah, because it's dumb. It's dumb. That's cute. TikTok's giving me a notice. Great job. You've gone live for 90 minutes. Don't forget to take a break. Thanks, TikTok Autobot. I will. All right. Let me give the quick summary of the stories we covered today, and then we'll get going. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg says today that Bakhmut could fall in the coming days, but he stressed the loss of the city wouldn't really matter. Institute for the Study of War talked about what happens next after Bakhmut. Bottom line is, and I went through lots of detail on this, but Bakhmut, the town in the east, the Russians have been fighting like crazy for. It puts the Russians in a position to not help at all. I'll try to do Discord tomorrow. If these things don't go too long, Callum, I'll do a Discord afterwards. But they've been going very long lately, so the Institute for Study of War said that basically if the Russians take control of Bakhmut in the next few weeks, it won't matter because Bakhmut gives them no advantage whatsoever to go to the northwest and take the towns they really need to take, which are, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Coming from Bakhmut, it's a total disaster. The Russians won't be able to pull it off. Institute for Study of War then talked about a Russian poll showing 51% of Russians feel negatively towards Russians who left the country, so they didn't get called up in the draft. The Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, testified before Congress today. She's America's top intelligence official. And basically, overall, she said she thinks Putin doesn't have the ability to conduct any more large offenses this year, or offensives, and rather will try to drag out the war and wait for NATO to no longer support Ukraine. That's my paraphrase. She didn't say that exactly. I then talked about Georgia, the former Soviet country in Europe. It's in the second day of clashes between citizens and the police over a foreign agents law that would require local organizations that take money from abroad, certain of them, to register as, agents of a foreign entity or whatever. And basically, it's a Russian style law. They're trying to cut back on democracy in the country, and the protesters rightly worry that it's going to hurt Georgia's chances to join the European Union, and the European Union already came out today and said, you're right, it will. Finally, the Pentagon is blocking the Biden administration from sharing with the International Criminal Court in The Hague evidence gathered by the U.S. intelligence agencies about Russian atrocities in Ukraine, because they're afraid it establishes a precedent for the ICC to ask for that information to come after American troops. And my simple response to that was, when the ICC does that, you simply say, no, we're not going to give you intelligence to go after our own country. Help the damn Ukrainians go after the Russians. What's wrong? By the way, well, let's see what happens. If Biden does it, Biden, I think, is going to approve it. Oh, hello, you, Missy. If Biden doesn't approve it, then it'll be all hell to pay. I think Biden's going to say, do it. I think it's stupid. So, all right, guys, we've been doing an hour and a half. Let's call it quits. My voice is still here, so I don't want to lose it. We'll try to do Discord tomorrow night. We go and hang out on the Discord after the show when it's a normal hour-long show, but since it's been an hour and a half, I don't want to push it anymore with my voice. But otherwise, do check out my links, like I said, on my TikTok. Check out the link tree. You'll find my Patreon, my Discord, my store, Aravosis, store.aravosis.com. All sorts of ways of helping me. And all right, dog. I know she went. My God, she drives me nuts. My dog knows that around this hour I brush her teeth. But of course, the doggy toothpaste tastes like peanut butter, and then she gets a treat afterwards. So she really likes to get, even though she hates getting her teeth brushed, she likes getting her teeth brushed. So she's sitting here standing by the toothbrush, looking up at it, going, so I've learned my lesson for going late with you people. All right. Well, she's hard to. Oh, she's going to get, if I can try to pick her up. She gets pissed. Somebody's asking if they can see her. I'm going to try. 1 second. Come here. 1 second. Come here. Hey, what are you doing? Come back. Oh, you're terrible. Hey, come here. Get over here. Oh, she totally knows what's going on because she's running around the room. Sasha, come here. Come on. Thank you. Come here. Come on. Thank you. Okay. Oh my God. That was ridiculous. Absolutely. She ran. She ran around the apartment. She ran on the other side of my dining room table. Then she ran behind my couch. She hates being picked up, but she's also very smart. So she knew that basically I was picking her up for whatever I was doing at the kitchen because she knows I do that a lot this time of night. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's my girl who's getting a haircut in a week and a half because she's a mess. But okay, I'll put you down. Okay, we'll do your teeth. All right, guys. There you go. Oh, no, she's absolutely adorable. Yeah, but way too smart. She just, way too smart of a dog. All right, guys, I'm signing off. Thank you again for all the gifts. Thank you, moderators, for doing your stuff. And just thank you for joining us all. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, US, as always. And we will do the latest news again. So, all right, bye, guys. Thank you.